Hey, Bob. Hey, is Bob on the line here? Bob, this is Kyle Coons from the Cedar Rapids Rotary. How are you?
Good. Good morning, Kyle. Welcome to our meeting.
Ready? Good morning, City of Lakes Rotary. Good to see you all. Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
We can't hear Scott.
Scott, you're muted.
Now are we on? There we go. The mic was shut off there. All right, we have a reflection, I think, from Daniel Cadet, if Daniel's online.
It is true. I am online. I made the last minute jump here. Sorry about that, everyone. So yeah, my reflection today is, kind of on the four-way test. As a small business owner and just a human being, I'm always kind of impressed on how it's applicable to day-to-day life and how I kind of come up with, situations and interactions where I'm thinking, well, this is actually a perfect, time to implement the four-way test, or it just naturally evolves that way. And one of them was, so I am right now, this week actually is the Architects Convention or conference for Minnesota, and it's virtual, but I'm going to participate today in an Essex conversation, and it's one of our requirements for licensure that we get Essex credits. And I was just I got a high level summary that we're going to be discussing the 5 general Essex perspectives, and they all seem to align with the four-way test really well. I just wanted to read them briefly. So there's utilitarianism, do the most good for the most people, so applicable. Categorical imperative, do what's right no matter the cost, I think also can be applied. Justice is fairness, guarantee equal rights and opportunities. And then let's see, we have 2 others. Communitarianism, shoulder your responsibility to seek the common good. And then altruism, love thy neighbor, seek to help others, even one at a time. So, this is a course that's put on by, I believe, a law firm does this for us architects. And yeah, it's kind of funny that the four-way test really summarizes probably what I'm going to learn in 2 hours a lot faster than the course might. But yeah, so I've grown to appreciate more of the four-way test and its applicability kind of across all aspects of my life. So that's my reflection for the morning.
Thank you, Daniel. Leave it to us lawyers to kind of add on some verbiage there for you. All right, the rooters. Tomorrow is Veterans Day. So all of us, we're going to do America the Beautiful. And rooters, if you want to come on up, you could sit or stand, but you should stand for this, right?
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriotry that sees beyond the years. Thy
visiting guests and visiting Rotary.
Always use my principal voice, so I don't really have to worry about the microphone. But we actually only have one guest who isn't really a guest because he's been with us several times. So Andrew Hoffman is going to be inducted in the coming months. So we just want to welcome you again. Sorry, and I think we may have a guest online. Jean? Okay.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for all the hospitality over the last few weeks. I look forward to meeting all of you individually as well, just kind of get to learn more about your story and how you kind of got connected with Rotary Club. As I've shared in the past, I have been involved in a few different Rotary clubs throughout the years. I'm currently the executive director of the YMCA in downtown Minneapolis. So just wanted to say thank you again for the hospitality, and I look forward to connecting.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you so much. Jim?
Hi, I'd like to introduce Addie Cross, who's with us from El Salvador. And we're getting to know Addie. We are going to be sponsoring her for a 2022 Global Peace Grant, and she'll be telling maybe just a little bit more about it, Addie, for just a minute or two. Could you?
Sure, no problem. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me again at the City of Lakes Rotary meeting, even though I'm coming at you from my balcony in San Salvador. I'm applying for a Rotary Global Grant Scholarship. And so I know that I visited and mentioned that before, but the scholarship it's funded by Rotary, and it allows students to seek postgraduate studies as long as they're outside of the US. And so obviously that's no problem for me. Because I really love to travel and I love to learn internationally. I'm an aspiring foreign service officer, so I'm hoping to become a US diplomat after completing grad school. But in the meantime, I'm applying to a few universities, one in Scotland, one in Germany, and one in Italy. So thanks so much. And it's 70, at least yesterday here, it was 79 degrees, and my coworkers described it as chilly. So I'm gonna send some of that sunshine over to Minneapolis.
You, Addie. I think our microphone might be out here, so hopefully we'll keep it on for a while. I know how you can hear me in here. All right, and Kyle Kuntz is on the line, but Kyle, I'm gonna let you shine during the Minnesota-Iowa things that go on. Next, we have an installation. This is one of my favorite parts of a Rotary meeting. We are installing a new member, Lynn Otis. So, Jean.
And I will call on Lynn and Maria to come up and join me. So it is my privilege and honor today to welcome Lynn Otis as a new member of the City of Lakes Rotary Club. Lynn is sponsored by Maria Bavender. All right, yeah, why not? Lynn has recently moved back to the Twin Cities to finish up her 39-year career with Macy's as a store manager here in the cities. Her interests, so she's recently retired. Her interests are cooking, sports, and volunteering. So she is at the right place. She's volunteered with Dress for Success, the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors in Sioux Falls, Meals on Wheels, and the Cap Agency Thrift Store in Carver County. She has a real passion for community service, which you will figure out pretty quickly when you talk to her. Lynn has been diving right into City of Lakes, connecting with several members to learn more about our club. Her classification is retail retired. Nice. Lynn, you are joining a global network of leaders in Rotary and the approximately 90 members that make up the City of Lakes Rotary Club. As I believe you've already seen, you'll find many opportunities to participate. We look forward to seeing you at our Wednesday morning meetings, volunteer projects locally and maybe globally, if you follow in Maria's footsteps, committee meetings, partaking in happy hours, other social events, and many other things that are going to come up. We have a few items for you. These are yours. And whoa, 2 microphones for double coverage. And we have a pen that I'm going to give to Maria that she can present to you as your sponsor.
Lynn, wear this with pride for the greatest Rotary Club on the earth, as well as an international organization. So welcome to our club.
Thank you. Thank you.
So one more thing the script says that I would not dream of deviating from is that we're going to stand. We all need to stand and recite just one more time the 4-way test. You won't leave here today without knowing the 4-way test, but there it is. I'll get out of the way so in case you want to see it. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? So, and I'll say, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn because we're doing something new today. We're going to, oh, you can go ahead and sit down. What an obedient group. Wow. We're going to, Lynn is going to give her vocational today. So we're putting them together so you get to meet her and learn more about her all in one sitting here today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lynn, and welcome to the best Rotary Club in the world.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for really making me feel so welcome. Special thanks to Jean for introducing me to so many wonderful members already and getting me onboarded. She just lights up the room with her positivity. So thank you very much, Jean, and thanks to Maria. And you'll hear a little bit about her in this as well. So when I was thinking about this, I guess the first thing that I wanted to share was, as Jean talked about, I recently retired after 39 years as a vice president and store manager for Macy's. And I was a store manager for 28 years, 26 of them in the Sioux Falls market and 2 of them at the Maplewood store here in Maplewood, Minnesota. Prior to that, I was a buyer and a corporate import development buyer and worked for the May Company and worked in procurement and got to travel the world. And it was a great experience, especially as a young person. I love the business. I felt so fortunate to be in a business that I truly loved the entire time I was in it. I think the thing that I appreciate most and enjoyed the most was mentoring talent and leading a team. Mentoring young people is one of my passions, and I'm proud to say that both stores I left, I was replaced by 2 of my mentees. So very, very excited about that. I grew up in the Detroit area and went to college at Michigan State University and Wayne State University, where I graduated. I lived in North Carolina and the Cleveland-Akron area before coming to Minneapolis in 1981 and working for Dayton's, an old name from the past. The first person I met in Minneapolis was a person named Maria Manning. Now, this is before both of us were married, now Bavender, and we have been friends ever since. So a long, long time. When I was ready to be a store manager, the expectation is that we went to a regional store. So you had to leave the Twin Cities, and I'd been there about 12 years, and I was ready to move on. I had just gotten married, and my husband was up for the challenge. And so we moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. He took the opportunity to change careers at that time, and his career took off when we were there. Sioux Falls was a very thriving community, a lovely place to live. And I was able to get very involved in the community, and it was a great experience. I served on, as Jean mentioned, a few of those, but served on the Chamber of Commerce, Dress for Success Advisory Board, Junior Achievements Board, and I was a volunteer for 17 years, Volunteers of America's board, and I was president of the Convention and Visitors Bureau Board while I was there. In addition, I was really involved in a mentorship program through MB, which was the old YWCA, for Young Leadership Women's Program, and I still do one virtually there. The other area that my late husband and I were involved in was junior hockey. Now you're going to say, where did that come from in Sioux Falls? We weren't fortunate enough to have children of our own as we got married later in life. But we served as a billet family. Does anybody know what that is? Yeah, we were billet family for 37 young men, 16 to 20, trying to get full college scholarships to D1 schools. Either they already had them and were preparing for that, or were trying to get a scholarship. And about 85% of them that go to play in the junior leagues, in terms of the junior A leagues, do get full scholarships to school, which is pretty exciting. It was extremely rewarding and fun to have these kids in our home, these young men, and to see their journey as they practiced and played 60 games a year. We acted as the head of the billet families for the team, and our first coach was Bob Motzkow, who's now the head coach of the Gophers. So lots of great memories and just a lot of lovely experiences. I'm still very close to a lot of the young men that, played on the team, and then I'm having dinner with one of them this week. So I'm looking so forward to being part of this group. It is a dynamic group and getting to know all of you. And I thank you for your warm welcome. Thank you.
Welcome, Lynn. It's so nice to have you with us. It's time for announcements now, and let's start with Gary, if you're ready and not talking or eating. I will start with you. Yes.
Well, last Saturday, we had absolutely perfect weather. Scott took charge of the weather, and he did a wonderful job. But we had 35 people ultimately show up to rake, and we raked 12 homes for seniors and shut-ins and challenged people in South Minneapolis. And and Lynn was one of them. Before she even got inducted, Lynn participated in the raking. One of the nice things, it's a family-friendly event. One of the nice things about this compared to some of our other service projects is you actually, in many cases, get to meet the recipients of our service. We go to CES, we pack food, we never see the people who get the food. We do the hats and gloves, we deliver them to social service agencies, but we never get to see the people who, unless you see somebody walking around with those hats and gloves. In this case, at least the team I was on, and we divide up into 3 teams and take 4 houses apiece. There's your Juicy Lucy at the end. And that's mine, and I did get it on my chin. So my team in particular, and I'm sure the other teams, got an opportunity to meet some of the homeowners. And there was one instance, I think our second home, the lady, I knocked on the door and the lady was so excited to see us, and she came out and she had a bowl of Power bars and granola and passed it out to us and walked around with us and talked with us. And she told us her story a little bit while we were raking. And her yard was meticulous. It was just a beautiful gazebo and Japanese statuary and so on. Very zen. And she said she felt at peace in it. But her story was her husband was inside, flat on his back. They had been trying to treat his lung cancer unsuccessfully. They don't have any kids and they have switched to just maintenance now. And she was trying to manage his pain, which meant every 4 hours she had to, usually about an hour too late, she had to give him his pain medications round the clock, 24 hours a day. And she literally, we all had tears in our eyes. But here's another person that we rake for. She texted me afterwards and said, OMG, I'm so grateful to you all. So appreciated your generous spirit. Please let your team know, take care. And one other one, this by email, what wonderful people who work together so well. Again, thank you. And that's, I mean, think about this next year when it's time to rake. This is why we do this kind of thing in community service. It's so rewarding. We all feel better than the homeowners do. At this time, I'd like everyone who did rake to please stand up, and those of you online, raise your hand anyway and be recognized. Thank you all for helping out. And one last thing, we always go to Matt's Bar for the Juicy Lucy's that you saw there. And everybody always over contributes, even though we leave a generous tip, we still exceed that. So I have $25 that was left over for Happy Bucks or our foundation here.
Great, thank you, Gary. Lisa Moncrief has an announcement. Hey, Lisa.
That's so great to hear about Rake, Rattle, and Roll. I wasn't able to rake this year, but I almost just showed up for the Juicy Lucy's. Thank you. So I'm here to announce our annual gift drive. And this year, we will be partnering again with the Boys and Girls Club of the Twin Cities in their Kids Can Give program. So similar to last year was different with COVID, but similar to the year before that, we will be, buying gifts for their store at the Boys and Girls Club location, where the kids can come to the store and buy gifts for their family, which it's just so heartwarming to see how excited, these kids are to be able to go and get gifts. They usually, have to pay like $1 or $2 still to contribute something for the gifts, but it's a really cool program. There will be 3 ways to give again, online like we did last year. They will be coming to the club to pick up gifts at a couple of the meetings. Thinking the 8th and the 15th. I'm still finalizing some of the details, but and then also to just drop off your gift at the Jerry Gamble location. And then there's a volunteer opportunity at the store on December 22nd. That's the one day they have for that location. For us as a group, it would be great for Andrew and Lynn, no pressure, to show up for helping the kids sort of pick out a gift or gift wrap the gifts. It's just a lot of fun. So that's in the afternoon of the 22nd for those who are working. Sorry, that's what time they have, and it's a Wednesday, but and then we'll probably do something. Anna and I will plan something afterwards, like, a happy hour. There's always an excuse for a happy hour, right? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Matthew Prediger has an award to give.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me okay? Good morning, City of Lakers. It's time to announce our October winner. We have a prize to the City of Lakes member who brought the most guests to our meetings last month, and it's Jim Voss. Congratulations, Jim. Jim will make a selection from his plethora of prizes to choose from gift cards to restaurants and coffee shops, and of course, lots of Rotary swag. So just a reminder to all of you that the contest is on for November. Bring a guest to our meetings. Remember that about 80% of new members come by way of you bringing guests to meetings, so keep them coming. Congratulations to Jim Voss. Welcome, Lynn, Otis, and Daniel Cadet. I would love to borrow your jacket for the next time I play game show host. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, Matthew. I like that happy music you have playing in the background. And you kind of had a calypso beat there. Be like Jim, be like Greg, bring some guests. We appreciate it. All right, next. Why do we do this Minnesota-Iowa competition to raise money for Polio Plus? Well, Jim has a great video that he shared with us, and we're going to key that up to talk about Polio Plus and why give to the Minnesota-Iowa game.
And then the slum, Iron Lung, I just climbed into it just to get a sense of what it must have been like for thousands and thousands of children who had to be put in here. And I'm telling you, it's abject horror to be inside of this. This is the machine that mechanically inflated their lungs, which have been paralyzed by polio. You know, in September of 2021, right now, there are only 2 new cases of polio in the entire world. And that might not seem like much to you. You have to put that into some context. See, you have to go back to the 1940s and 50s when the fear of polio gripped people so much that if they heard of a polio case in their neighborhood, they sent their children away if they had the means to do so, to be hopefully safe from the polio virus. Theaters were closed, except for church, nobody really got together, not for birthday parties. Swimming pools were closed and the such. Well, then 2 doctors, Dr. Salk and Dr. Sabin, developed 2 cheap and effective vaccines in the mid-1950s. And that changed everything. So now 2 cheap and effective vaccines could be distributed around the world. Well, the world had 30 plus years. Let's take you to 1985. One would think that after 30 years of 2 cheap and effective vaccines, the world would be rid of polio. But in fact, there were 387,000 cases of polio in 125 countries around the world. And the World Health Organization said that was endemic, common, normally occurring and expected in a given population. It was Rotary International that said, that's just a geopolitical, logistical problem to be solved. So let's jump forward now to today, a little more than 30 years later. Now, isn't it impressive that we're down to 2 cases in 2 countries in the entire world? We are this close to eradicating polio. And I have to tell you, when our tarnished rotary pins are found by our great-great-grandchildren, what will they be told that that pin represents? I want it to be synonymous with an end to the dreaded disease of polio. And our children's children's children will say, wow, or whatever it is that they say that means wow. Godspeed our goal of a polio-free world. Thank you very much.
Jim, do you want to add something? Thanks.
just add that I just checked yesterday and that number is still 2 this year. That's the update. Tim is a member of the Rotary Club of Chanhassen, by the way. He's named after his uncle who died of polio in the late 40s. And I have a sister-in-law who was in one of those iron lungs in the 50s. Fortunately, she's still with us. She limps. She has some respiratory problems, but she's one of the lucky ones that she survived. So this is why we do it. It's a real signature project of Rotary. It'll be the second disease to be eradicated ever in the history of humankind, first being smallpox. So we should be proud of that. We were the ones who really initiated the global eradication program. Tremendous help from World Health Organization with our advocacy, really spurred on by our advocacy. So I don't want to take any more time. So anyway.
Thank you, Jim. That's why you give. You also give because you can win these spectacular prizes that are up here. So, Dick, let's go. Minnesota, Iowa. First of all, I think we have an Iowan from Cedar Rapids on the line.
Scott, Kyle had to leave for an 8 o'clock appointment.
We lost our Iowan.
You lost your Iowan. Well,
okay. Well, okay, this will just have to do. So Bob Benish, can you hear me out there online?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Let's mute Bob for just a second. The Minneapolis City of Lakes Rotary Club has been doing this Minnesota, Iowa fundraiser together for more than 34 years. And it's been a long 34 years for the poor Gophers, but great for our club and great for the causes that we choose. And as Jim said, there's no better cause than to donate the money that we raise to Polio Plus. So thanks everybody who's filled out the form so far. And further, thank you for those who are going to fill it out either today or in the next day or two. We can unmute Bob for just a second. The plan is on for the University of Minnesota as Iowa has won 6 in a row and won most of the last 34 games. Any chance for the Gophers to win this year?
Well, as a Gopher fan, we always need something to cheer about besides the results of the game. And that's why we have the Minnesota Iowa Challenge. And this year, above all, we want to per capita raise more money than our friends in Cedar Rapids. I'm sorry that Kyle Coons had an 8 o'clock appointment, had to leave, but I attended their meeting via Zoom on Monday, and they're all fired up about supporting our partnership to fundraise for polio. And Dick will be handling the raffle this morning. We have always a Minnesota Iowa theme for our raffle prizes. We have a box of caramels that are made by the nuns in a monastery in Dubuque. The last 2 weeks we had Death Wish coffee, which takes a death wish to go to Iowa because every moment there is an eternity. This week we have a special kind of coffee, civet coffee, the world's most expensive coffee, otherwise known as poop coffee, because the civet, a small animal in Southeast Asia, eats the coffee cherries, and what it defecates is a coffee bean that makes coffee that is the smoothest, best cup of coffee you will ever have. And it fits in with Iowa because there's no state in the union that produces more poop than Iowa. With its pigs, cattle, chickens, and people, it produces enough manure to be the equivalent of a country with 168 million population, equal to the entire country of Bangladesh. So enjoy your Iowa poop coffee. Take it away, Dick.
Do you see why I wanted to mute him for more time than that? So we'll do a very quick happy bucks.
I think just so we can get to our speaker, I think what I'm going to do is have you go around and collect cash and slips, because we have three other spectacular things you could get. Honey from Carol Russell. And look at these lovelies. Aren't these cool? Aren't these great? So Tom Tamara's wife makes these. Tom, yeah, and so you put a stick in them and put them in your like flower bed or somewhere, and they're just cute decorations. So we got spectacular prizes. I'm sorry we just don't have time to do happy bucks today, but put your money in the hat. put a slip in with your name on it. You could win one of these spectacular prizes. Thank you. So I'll come pick up the slips and your donations. The Rake, Rattle, and Roll team started us off with 25. So hand me money and slips of paper and we'll do a raffle at the end. Good?
Perfect. Go first.
And I have to say, Ollie's, you have to pay up because we lost to Gustavus. Tragedy struck. Tragedy struck. All right, moving on to our day chair today. Alex Velenchikowski is our day chair. Alex and his wife, Katie, run a financial planning practice where they specialize in working with physicians. He has a particular interest in helping their clients solve how they're going to spend and distribute their resources during retirement to maximize comfort and efficiency. When he's not working, you'll usually find him playing with his 2.5-year-old son named Ronan. And if he's not doing that, he could be cross-country skiing in the winter or fly fishing when the water isn't frozen. Alex is a resident of the Victory neighborhood in North Minneapolis since 2012. Alex, good to see you today. Thank you for being our day chair.
All right. Today, we're going to hear from Ron Wirtz. He's the Regional Outreach Director for the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. Ron's primary responsibilities involve tracking current business conditions across 6-state 9th Federal Reserve District, which includes Northwest Wisconsin, Michigan's Upper Peninsula, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana. Among many areas of the economy, Ron pays special attention to employment and wages, which are central to the Federal Reserve's dual mandate of promoting stable prices and maximum employment, along with construction, real estate, consumer spending, and tourism. Ron is a central contributor to the Beige Book, which is a report of current business conditions published by the Federal Reserve System every 6 weeks. Ron's work includes extensive outreach to business and community leaders, and he gives frequent speeches on the economic conditions across the 9th District. Previous to this position, Ron was editor of
That's enough. That's enough. Nobody needs to hear anything else.
All right. It's good stuff. So anyway, give a warm Rotary welcome to Ron.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for the energy. You know, I actually do a lot of these talks, and the thing I love about Rotary is there's energy and there's variety. You know, I can't say enough about the things I heard about coming in. I almost feel bad presenting, you know, an economy speech. You know, my wife is not a morning person. I am. And she asked me last night, I told her I had this presentation. She's like, who even wants to hear about the economy at 8 o'clock? I think I found my group. So I really appreciate the energy. The polio video was very powerful. I have a godfather that limps because of polio. You know, Dan mentioned something about the AIA meeting later today. I'm presenting at that too. So there seems to be all these little connections. So I just really appreciate being able to come and talk with you. I was originally thinking I had a lot more time than this, so I'm going to have to go through a fair number of slides fairly quickly. I'll try to leave a little bit of time at the end for some questions, but we'll see how far we can get. So there's my disclaimer, my views, not the bank's. So I'm going to talk about the current state of the economy. I'll do some macro and some micro. I might have to go through some things fairly quickly. I want to talk about firms and workers, and especially workers, probably where I'm going to focus most of my time here. In terms of the overall theme, the good news is that we're seeing growth. Overall demand still is really pretty solid, but there are really lots of challenges trying to meet that demand. And that's why I think we're actually seeing a little bit of slowing. Delta is still a problem out there. It's not the problem that it was, you know, maybe a year ago, but it's still present, and that creates some volatility and some uncertainty, and that tends to create caution. So again, I'm going to present a lot of data. I'm happy to share this slide deck for those that might have interest in looking at it more closely. So don't get too invested in any particular chart. So the real big picture, GDP, gross domestic product, basically the news is we saw the big drop in Q2 of last year, a nice rebound, but things have been slower since. Actually, not that slow. We've been above trend, The thing I would note though is the Q3 number just came out for the US and it was 2%. And we're the farthest we've ever been from a stimulus package, acknowledging that the infrastructure stimulus was, or a package was just passed. That's going to take a while to get into the economy, I think. 2% of the last quarter, I expect the state GDP figures to be fairly similar. So I have a feeling, so we're seeing some slowing. I have a feeling that might be the trajectory right now because of a lot of challenges we're seeing. From the employment standpoint, it's a little bit different. We did see a very nice rebound in Q3 of last year, but the trajectory since then is really quite flat. So 100, I put this on an index, which is basically a rate of change over time. So, and what you're going to see, we have to get back to 100 in order to be back to pre-pandemic levels. And right now at the current trajectory, our job growth is really quite slow. It's going to take us a while probably to get back to pre-employment. Pre-pandemic employment. A little bit more quickly, actually, you know what? I think in the interest of time, I'm actually going to skip a few slides here. Basically, what this chart says is I do a lot of survey work with businesses, and I just recently did one in October. And essentially what this chart says is the red is bad, green is good, and we asked businesses to compare their recent revenues over 3 periods: compared to the last quarter, compared to the same period last year, and the expectations for the coming 3 months. And generally speaking, we're seeing positive revenue growth year over year and quarter over quarter. But I do this survey quarterly, and these survey results are a little bit more compressed, a little less positive compared to July. I think that's a lot of what I'll talk about next is kind of these COVID and many other challenges that businesses are facing. We're particularly seeing effects in consumer-facing sectors, and the construction sector is also seeing some good demand, but lots of challenges. The good news is that the outlook is still positive. And these are really the big challenges right now. So we ask firms to identify which are the greatest challenges to operating capacity and productivity. And the 3 that are jumping out right now are the 3 on the very right. Price increases for materials, so inflation, supply chain disruptions, and labor availability really rises to the top and has been getting more and more pronounced over time. So real quick, in terms of the supply chain, you're probably hearing a lot more of that, especially as we head into Christmas and everyone's telling you, get your stuff now. So there's really not one story with regards to the supply chain. It's really made up of many smaller chains that have a lot of overlap and connectedness. The good news is that we're seeing persistently strong demand for goods, but that has equaled low inventories. So what's happening is producers are really trying to meet not only new demand, but they're trying to restock inventory. But they're having problems sourcing some materials due to that strong demand. And they're also facing a lot of labor constraints, which existed before the pandemic, and they're just being compounded now. And when you have those challenges, they make all of these little interconnections that are either from either a global or a domestic supply chain, they just make them really complicated. And really what it's kind of shown to me, at least, is that this hyper efficient global supply chain that we had pre-pandemic is really vulnerable to pandemic conditions because there's essentially no latent capacity to tap. There's no redundancy that if one part of the chain goes out, it can easily be replaced by a different part of the chain. Inflation, I'm only going to say very quickly, everyone's, I think, familiar with the fact that prices in general have been going up. The Fed pays more attention to personal consumption expenditures. It's a different index than the consumer price index. The consumer price index essentially takes a standard basket of goods and measures it month by month by month, unchanging goods in there. Personal consumption expenditures essentially acknowledge that consumers substitute goods. So when the price of beef goes up, I substitute more chicken. So it's a better measure of actual household inflation. And what we do see is that these measures, we are seeing very elevated inflation on PCE, less than what you read about in the media as far as CPI. Real quickly, wages are going up. More than half of firms have given raises of 3% or more, and large firms are more likely to give larger raises. That matters because more workers work at large firms. They have a larger share overall of the employment pie. That means more people are getting higher wages. don't forget COVID. I think we feel like it's in the background, but it really underlies a lot of the challenges that we're seeing with regards to inflation, with regards to supply chains, with regards to labor availability. And right now we're seeing caseloads, the chart on the left. These charts are actually available on a dashboard that we have on our website if you're interested. But basically the point here is that when caseloads rise, consumers react. We've seen it all throughout the pandemic. It's not a political statement. Simply, when COVID infections rise, consumers react, both to the positive and to the negative with regards to COVID infections. The good news here, if there is any, but it's also an additional challenge, is that we've actually seen a really nice spurt of entrepreneurship during the pandemic. The bad news is that you might have lost an employee because they started a new business, and then that employee is going to also compete for labor. So let's talk a little bit about labor demand. The really good news, I think people are probably pretty familiar with it in the room, is that there are jobs everywhere, literally everywhere. And we've seen them go well past pre-pandemic levels. The other good news is that we've seen unemployment fall, but it hasn't really had an effect on total employment. I showed you the chart on the left earlier. As unemployment levels have fallen, there have been other reasons for why that's happening. And actually, I'm going to skip this chart. Part of the reason, as I focus more of the rest of this talk on labor supply, this is really kind of the crux of the issue right now. And labor force participation has really fallen during the pandemic. We're seeing it decline over a lot of the last decade, but before the pandemic, it would look like it was maybe pivoting up. Then the pandemic hit, and we've seen it take a significant hit to the downside. Like a heart attack, you see a very significant shock. The recovery from that is going to be a lot longer. I don't expect these rates to recover back to pre-pandemic levels for some time, short of something unique happening. Real quickly, normally when you see unemployment fall, you see labor force rise. What has happened during the pandemic is that unemployment has fallen, mostly because a lot of people are leaving the labor force. What we don't know, because basically unemployment is whether you're, unemployment is if you're looking for work. Labor force is working or looking for work. Basically, what we've seen is that a lot of people are actually leaving the labor force and not looking for work. Some of them may be temporary, some maybe not. That's something, frankly, we're really trying to figure out. Some people thought that it was a matter of the pandemic era unemployment benefits being too generous. What we're seeing right now is that doesn't appear to be the case. We ask, when we do our surveys, we've asked recently businesses, what have you seen in terms of the number of applicants? And generally speaking, we're seeing some that have seen increase. We've seen a similar percentage say there's been a decrease. So there really hasn't been a much net effect yet. It might change as we go forward. But right now, we're not seeing a big influx of labor because of that. And staffing firms who I talk to very frequently are saying the same thing. Real quickly on this, I won't spend as much time as I normally would on this. Pay attention to the red line here. This is a monthly survey by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And basically what's happening is that quits are rising, and they're rising in the midst of a pandemic. That has never happened in a recession or circumstances like this. So there's lots of things going on right now in the labor force that we're trying to better understand. Why are they not taking jobs? That's a really good question. In our survey work and in my other outreach, generally speaking, what I hear is that nobody wants to work anymore. Workers are lazy, government benefits are too generous. People are using COVID as a reason to just not work. And I think there's likely some truth to this. I do think that's evident and present in the labor market. But what I would also say is that it's probably a too simple generalization. It likely only fits a fairly small share of the non-working population. And arguably, it probably fits a population that we're not likely to see a huge improvement or a huge productivity from in the first place. So in my opinion, it misses a much more complicated labor picture. And by doing so, we likely misdiagnose some of the real problems and some real solutions to move us forward. Real quickly on this, the bank has decided that it really needed to do something different. We've always tracked the economy, but we've typically done so via firms. And the reason is when we talk to firms, when we measure their output and we can track their employment, things like that, they can give us really good insights on economic activity across geography, so Minnesota versus South Dakota, as well as industries, manufacturing versus construction. But that view is really one-sided, especially when it comes to labor market environments. So what we are doing is we are trying to understand labor markets more from a worker point of view, and especially among those that are not working right now. Really, it's a pretty simple idea. We're trying to get more insights related to job search and how people get jobs, keep them over time. And we're starting with some intermediaries. So basically those organizations that work with the job seeking population. We've done some surveys recently. Why is this important? I think labor force participation is probably the single most important factor in long-term economic growth coming out of this pandemic. Don't try to read this chart. What I'm basically going to tell you is we did a survey with staff among a lot of nonprofits that work with job seekers. What we're finding out more and more is that there are a multitude of frictions to labor force participation. Some of them are worker-based, so they may not have the right skills. They may not have transportation. Some of them are employer-based. There may be a really hard screening HR process in place. You may not get back to applicants. You may have a low-paying job. Okay. There are also some factors that are related to the economic environment. What we're seeing increasingly is that the availability of daycare, affordability of daycare, and the affordability of housing are jumping up in terms of what are really challenging to a lot of potential job seekers. So there's just really a lot of factors that, again, that narrative that we talked about before probably doesn't fit. Again, we asked the staff to kind of characterize why job seekers were turning down available jobs, and we have to acknowledge that motivation does play a role here. Okay, but there are many other tensions that go to job matching, and I think firms tend to point to external sources. Workers tend to point to something different. So I think there are lots of things that I think we can learn about what workers face in order to try to improve overall labor force participation. Excuse me. Why does it matter? Mostly because there's been a really fundamental shift. You know, we used to be in a labor surplus environment, and that allowed employers to basically screen out as many job applicants. If that person left, I had a replacement. Now we are in a labor shortage environment, which requires more screen-in policies, because you don't know if you lose a worker, there's not necessarily a good chance that you're going to find a good replacement for that person. So workers really have leverage right now, and I think we have to treat the obstacles that many of them face from a problem-solving point of view. It's the same thing we would do if you had a supply chain problem. If you're a restaurant and you didn't get your burger order, you would try to fix that problem like your hair was on fire. And I think we have to have a little bit of the same mindset when it comes to workforce. Without a doubt, it's happening already. I see it in a lot of firms. The question is whether it's happening fast enough and with enough firms. So, excuse me, I normally have surveys involved in this, but with a time crunch, I didn't include them here. So real quickly on the outlook, what this says is things are still positive, but from my July survey to my October survey, I'm seeing some pullback on that. I'm seeing more caution. I credit it a little bit to the supply chain problem, the labor problem, the prices problem, and COVID kind of underlying all of it. So some real quick final thoughts. The economy is growing. That's the good news. And I think there's capacity and demand for faster growth. The bad news is that there are some signs of slowing. Again, we haven't done similar stimulus packages like we had earlier. I think now we're seeing something maybe more close to the regular economy, for lack of a better phrase. And there are lots of challenges existing right now to meeting demand. And COVID kind of underlines a lot of it. Whether or not we control, to the extent that we control the virus or not, you'll see that reflected in the economy. labor force participation, really, really important. It's also going to be the most difficult to solve. So for the business, I know there are a lot of retirees in the group. For those that are still out, running businesses, this is a really hard time, and labor force problems are probably the most complex because we're humans and we're hard to deal with. And I totally get that. I'm always really struck by the ingenuity of business owners on how to solve problems. So I'm really hoping that we see a lot of problem solving in this area. Workers have leverage, and I'm hoping that we can problem solve with that mindset, so we can get more workers working at your firms. I think everybody wins in that case. So I apologize that I've had to go through this a little bit quickly. I hope I've left about 5 minutes for any questions that people might have.
Ron, we apologize to you. That was just fabulous. Thank you so much. That was great. Questions for Ron? Yes, Alex.
Ron, can you hear me if I'm not Mike?
I can just a little bit. I can, but I might have to have somebody repeat the question in case I don't get it. Go ahead.
Oh,
that's better.
What you said about the labor shortage, one of the biggest headwinds being daycare. I can attest that anecdotally in our client base, we're seeing a lot of that. And, I've got a cardiologist and his wife then works in corporate, and he makes like 85, but they're looking at having a second kid, and at their top marginal tax rate, she's literally not getting paid to work.
Right.
And, when the expense is $3,000 a month, with that temporary expansion in FSA in 2021, it was just temporary, so it probably didn't drive much behavior. Has it been considered what the impact would be if the FSA deductibility limits went up, and contribution limits for that matter went up to $30,000 a year to accommodate the actual cost of 2 kids in daycare?
Yeah. I don't think, I think without question, those things would have some impact. I think we're talking about impact at a higher income level for the most part. I think if I were to argue about the daycare, though, I think the bigger problem is on the much lower wage end. Those are the people that essentially are making that same trade-off, but with significantly less money. I don't think they're even thinking about the FSA deduction or the FSA contribution. I think they're more thinking, I have a $15 an hour job, and I might be spending half or more of that before tax on daycare, on my daycare. So then when you start thinking about, are these trade-offs worth it? I also have to have a car. I might have to have business clothes. I think we're starting to see that daycare affordability, in part because we also saw some capacity leave during the pandemic, because they've faced their own challenges. So you have a supply constriction, you have significant demand, but again, for the people that we've seen that have not re-entered the labor force, it's much more on the low wage side. So I think for us to come up with some solutions, I don't discount the FSA matter, especially for the higher skill jobs. I think that matters. But I would say the bigger egg to crack is on the low end.
The direct subsidies and tax credits and the like.
I'm not in the business of policy making, but I think at some point employers and government are going to have to figure out some mutual strategy that makes it worthwhile or makes it able for workers to not give all of their check to the daycare providers. And that's not to say daycare providers are the money grubbers at all, but it's a very reasonable fiscal decision not to work if daycare is taking most of your check.
Thank you, Ron.
I see Mark Labowitz has a question. How many people have left the labor force? Hard to convert index chart to a number.
I would have to go back to that. I believe the Minnesota employment, hang on, I can probably just, let me quickly. I believe we're in about 150,000 fewer workers than we had pre-pandemic, in fewer labor force right now. And some of that too is there's a composition issue going on here. You've heard about this great resignation. Some of it is just the fact that before the pandemic, we were moving into that baby boom retirement. And also seniors working more frequently than they had in past generations. I think we're seeing some of that labor force participation go down, some of that labor force pool go down because older folks are saying, you know what, this pandemic has really showed me I don't want either the exposure or I want to enjoy what time I got left. So it's a very complicated kind of composition that we're only now, I think, really trying to do a better job of understanding.
Ron, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. In your name, we will be donating a book to Way to Grow so that a third grader will be able to have a book of their own. And at some point, we hope to have you sign it, but eventually we'll get there and donate that book in your name. And we really do appreciate you speaking to us today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Let's draw names of winners, Dick. And then while he's doing that, I'm going to show you how cool these are from Tom Tamura. You stick that in your garden, there you have a cute little house. So it's perfect. So we'll draw names of winners here. The first one is Jim Eaton.
Come select your prize.
Russ Mickelets next.
These guys too.
Keith Showquist as the next pick. And Jim Voss, man, it's your lucky day today, Jim.
Then you should do that.
Take a house. And it,
You do. You get to choose coffee or a house or honey.
all right. Thank you all for being here today. What a fun meeting this has been. Good to see you all. And again, thank you to Daniel Cadet for the reflection, to Alex for its being day chair, to the Reuters, to Brock and Ross, and to Mary Pat as usual. Thank you all. Have a great Rotary week, everybody.
Go Gophers.
It's Jim got it. Who did we miss? Jim Eaton. Who didn't get there?
One more name that came out.
Jim Voss,
No, all those guys.
Jim Eaton, Keith Showquist, and Russ Mickelets. Keith got the honey.
Yep.
Jim.
Draw one more name.
Maybe did we have 5 gifts? Maybe we did. Oh, let's pull another name. Oh, Lisa Moncrief. We had 5 gifts. I pulled your name. We have one of these cute houses left. Oh, great. So